Hello friends and welcome back to Broken BJJ. My name's Kenny and today I want to talk about something that I should really have talked about 2 weeks or so ago. But for one reason or another, I've not been very good at getting videos out for the last wee while. So hopefully we'll get back on track now. But what I want to talk about is Scottish Grappling Invitational 8. As you can maybe guess, is the 8th event in the Scottish Grappling Invitational series. This was a series of events that started, I think, in 2018, where some of the people involved in running some of the open competitions around Scotland decided that they wanted to have something that was more of a sort of professional spectator sport as to go along with the kind of mass participation open tournaments that we all know about. So these events were started, and I'd heard about them. I'd seen some stuff on YouTube. But I'd never actually been to an event, and I had been hoping to go to the previous one, to SGI8, which happened just before lockdown started last year. But unfortunately, it was the day after I had my knee surgery, and I really wasn't fit to go out and then sit with my knee in a fairly cramped seat for a few hours to watch jiu-jitsu. So I was really pleased to get to this one. This was the first time back, and obviously there was a bit of pressure on that in terms of would people be willing to come out, would they be happy to wear masks, and everybody had to buy tickets in advance as well. There weren't tickets available on the door because of COVID restrictions. So that was something that I think obviously was putting some extra pressure on the organisers. But I have to say, from what I heard, this was, I think, their most successful show to date, and sold more tickets than any other show they've put on so far. It wasn't filmed, sadly, so there's almost no footage. There's bits and bobs that people filmed on their phones, but nothing super high quality. So unfortunately, you'll just have to take my word for it when I tell you how all the matches. The main event for this show had originally been planned to be an England versus Scotland team match, something like a quintet type match. But that fell through because of a number of injuries to people, to kind of key players in that. So the idea was changed to be an 8-man tournament. And this was an open weight tournament, so naturally it was going to attract some big people. And it did. The most notable names to people outside Scotland are probably Ed Ingamells, who's a big lad, a big heavyweight, and I think he has competed on Polaris at least a couple of times. So, a pretty well-known face around the UK scene. And the other bigger name was Owen Livesey, who coaches at Carlson Gracie in Hull. But Owen Livesey is possibly better known as a judo gold medalist in the Commonwealth Games that were held here in Glasgow in 2014. So Owen Livesey was coming back here to Glasgow for his first chance to kind of build on that and win another big tournament in Glasgow. So those were the two big names coming to Scotland for the event. But there was also a fairly big name on the Scottish scene that some of you outside Scotland might have just started to hear some rumblings about, and that's Mark Mcqueen. Mark McQueen's a former powerlifting world champion, an enormous, super strong guy. He was promoted to blue belt not very long ago. In his first tournament as blue belt at blue belt, which was just a couple of months ago, he beat black belts, including Ross Nichols, on his way to winning the absolutes. So, Mark McQueen's quite good. He got his purple belt just after winning that tournament, but he has moved up very quickly and has shown that not just he has incredible power, but that he is able to learn jiu-jitsu very quickly and very effectively. So I think a lot of people, a lot of the Scottish crowd anyway, were hoping that this was going to be a kind of coming out party for Mark McQueen, that this was going to be a chance for him to really show what he could do against some bigger name talent, certainly, than he'd faced so far here in. Now, as I said, I had never been to an SGI show before, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. I looked at the list of matches that were scheduled, and I thought that seemed like a very, very long night. I wasn't sure, obviously, of time limits, and I wasn't sure how long you would expect most of these matches to last, whether they were all the kind of matches that would be over in 30 seconds. But, you know, if they went longer, it could have been a very, very long night. I wasn't a super fan of the early start. The show, the doors opened at 5. The first match, I think, was just after 5:30. And that, to me, felt a little bit early. I think that would be off-putting to some potential spectators. But having said that, the show did move at a really, really quick pace. And we were all done by about 10:30. I think I was out of the building by 10:30. So as it turns out, it was a good value night, and had I wanted to, go out afterwards, I would have still been able to get to the pub for a couple of pints. So it's not the worst idea, but maybe if I were in charge, I might have started a little bit later and cut out a few matches, just to give people a little bit more breathing room, getting in and having time to maybe have a meal before they come. The venue, the Maryhill Central Community Halls, is a brilliant building for this kind of thing. It's the same building that Insane Championship Wrestling used for their first few shows. And you can see why they were able to create the kind of atmosphere that they created amongst their fans. It's just a perfectly shaped building. You can, if you want, go and have a look for SGI shows on YouTube. They're not super high production value, it's just one camera, but it's well worth seeing just the shape of the building, because there's a floor, and then there's on 3 sides there's banked seating, which just creates this little kind of cauldron atmosphere. There's no such thing as a bad sight line in there. Everybody can see everything. So it's just a really, really nice venue. And there's a bar there, which is always good. Has to be said, people weren't drinking a lot. I suppose a lot of them are jiu-jitsu people and focusing on a bit clean living. But I was kind of surprised by that. I thought it might have been a slightly, I don't know, rowdier crowd. But then maybe that's just because I'm so used to it. Anyway, the show did start, as I said, just between 5:30 and 6. And the first matches were matches from the tournament. So the very first match was Ed Ingamells versus Robert Pettigrew, and I was really looking forward to seeing Ed Ingamells. As I said, he's got a bit of a name, a bit of a character, a bit of a personality. I really liked the fact that when he came onto the mat, the first thing he did was wipe his feet. That might seem like kind of a trivial thing, but again, with my pro wrestling background, it's quite a kind of old-fashioned, traditional, respectful thing to do, to clean your feet before you got in the ring, because back in the old days, a lot of wrestlers got trachoma from eye infections, which was usually from dirt brought in on people's boots. So I liked that touch. Now he faced Robert Pettigrew is a purple belt. And he's also quite a bit smaller than Ed Ingamells. So he was at a big experience disadvantage and a big weight disadvantage, and it didn't take Ingamells very long to take advantage of that. He won pretty quickly with an ankle lock. He seemed very, very chilled, and that was one thing that I really liked about the way that Ingamells fights, is that he seemed so relaxed in all of his fights. Even when he was fighting hard, he was still just seemed so relaxed and so calm. And that's, something that I think probably all of us look up to a lot of the black belts we know and think, yeah, I wish I could be that. So the next match was Aiden Stephen versus Dylan Mooney. This one was another fairly short match. My notes say there was a scary leg entanglement early. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I do remember their legs getting tied up and me thinking, oh, somebody could get hurt here quite badly if somebody just moves the wrong way. As it ended up, it wasn't a leg lock that finished it, though. Aidan did win by a Darce in the end. Really exciting, really entertaining match. I'd really like to see more of both guys, I think. The next one after that was Mark McQueen, the guy we mentioned earlier, the former powerlifter, versus Keith Kavanagh. This was pretty much Mark McQueen just absolutely dominating. He's so strong, and you can see that in him. He's not especially muscular, he doesn't have a big kind of sculpted body, but you can just see that every fiber of muscle is just perfectly attuned to crushing things. He's just a big, strong guy. So he was on top for pretty much the whole match, trying body lock passes. He was taking him out more or less at will, but then Keith Kavanagh, who's a 10th Planet guy, was regarding, just constantly regarding, really, really impressively. In the end, McQueen, though, did get to mount and did manage to stay there long enough to get on an arm triangle, and that got him the win just about 8 minutes into the match. So I should say the matches were 10 minutes duration, except for the final of the tournament, which obviously we'll talk about. And so the last of the quarterfinal matches was Owen Livesey versus Gareth Byrne. And this one, Livesey is a scary looking man. He actually came and sat quite near me during a later part of the show to watch, I think, to watch one of the other matches anyway. And he has thighs that are thicker than my waist. He is a scary looking individual with real, again, kind of just looks extraordinarily powerful. So he came out against Gareth Byrne, dominated fairly convincingly, and then won with a chest compression submission. Just again, the kind of move that takes a bit of strength. The move that I think Josh Barnett used to beat Dean Lister in Met Morris some years ago. I know I've seen that match. But yeah, he just dominated, took his hold, and crushed poor Gareth Byrne's chest. I'd love to see Gareth Byrne again. He was a brave man to step into this tournament, knowing that there were going to be some guys in there who were a lot bigger, a lot stronger, and potentially a lot more experienced than him. And I would really like to see him get a chance to redeem himself a little bit. So we then went on. There was Lewis Penny versus Liam Slay. These are all non-tournament matches, I should say, which Penny won by triangle. I've got no notes on that, but I do seem to remember it was quite a fun match to watch. And then we saw Gavin Mcqueen, who is, I believe, Mark McQueen's older brother, who's been training a little bit longer. It was actually the one that introduced Mark to Jiu-Jitsu. But Gavin Mcqueen versus Kenny Haswell. McQueen put on a ton of pressure right from the beginning. There was a lot of back and forth through the match, and a really exciting finish just about 10 seconds from the end. McQueen dived for this armbar, obviously knowing time was running out. Dived for an armbar, didn't quite get it, and then the time ran out. He did win though on judge's decision. After that, we had our first gi match of the night, which would have been great, except that both guys came out in black gis, and that just made it a little bit hard to watch at times. Not really anyone's fault, but something that maybe could be thought about for future shows, because it's not a great spectator experience, especially when it's two black geese. I think even two white geese or maybe two blue geese might be a little bit easier, but black geese, just the light all just disappears and it's very hard to see where one person ends and the other one begins. In the end, Ashley Wiles won that one by bow and arrow. So then we had Aiden Balfour versus Kenny Patterson. Balfour came out in one of those rash guards that I always see Craig Jones in, the follow me on OnlyFans rash guard. So that was cute. He ended up winning the match by heel hook, so maybe that's his lucky rash guard. It's a very funny anyway. I just find it very amusing. So then we had a short break, and then we came straight back in for the semi-finals of the tournament. And first up was Ed Ingamells versus Aiden Stephen. This one was really quick. Again, Ingamells, just such a big guy, so strong, so skilled. He just cut through Aiden Stephen in seconds and got a rear naked in and finished it. I mean, the size difference was huge, though. Again, I'd really like to see Aiden Stephen I'd really like to see him fight people his own size to see what kind of competitor he really is, because he looked good in the first round and then just met a brick wall in Ed Ingamells that he wasn't likely to get past. And so then we came to Mark Mcqueen versus Owen Livesey, which for a lot of people I think was a real kind of that was a kind of unofficial main event in a lot of ways. Livesey, obviously, with that track record of really high level judo, he's a brown belt now under Carlson Gracie, or in that system anyway, and it was just a really, really interesting match, really hot crowd as well. A lot of people were there supporting Mark Mcqueen. Livesey had brought up a few people from Carlson Gracie and Hull, so it was a really exciting match. Obviously, very disappointing for the Scottish fans though, as Mark Mcqueen did lose out. It started up with a lot of stand up, which may have been a mistake for Mark. Obviously, the judo that Owen Livesey has is elite level. His ability to throw people, to get them onto the mat is probably unparalleled on that show. There's probably nobody who's got takedowns and on that kind of level. And I think Mark maybe wasted a little bit of time trying to wrestle with him. As it was, he did end up pulling guard about 5 minutes in, but then he just really struggled to get a sweep that could really work. He was working hard and was trying to make a lot happen, but Livesey just defended very well. I heard him saying after the show that when Mark tried to just frame against him, he said, you could feel that was a power lifter's ability to move weight. So I think it was difficult, obviously, for Livesey to pass, but he ended up getting the nod after a time limit draw. So yeah, really disappointing for Mark Mcqueen. That's the first time I believe he's ever lost in competition. So it'll be back to the drawing board for him. Hopefully, the loss doesn't set him back too much, doesn't crush his spirit. It certainly shouldn't, because he looks like a star. He obviously has the crowd really supportive of him. And, he's competing with guys that are a higher level of, a higher colored belt. Guys who are in his range physically, which, there aren't that many of for him to compete with in Scotland. And also, Owen Livesey, before he ever started jiu-jitsu, was an elite level judo competitor. So there's no shame in losing to somebody who's better than you, who's got more experience than you. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where Mark Mcqueen goes, kind of bouncing back from this. So we go back to non-tournament matches, and the next one up was James Smith versus, let me please try and get this right, Jan Tatarinovic. This was a good match. Jan dominated most of it. He took the back and controlled for almost all of the last 5 minutes of the match. Couldn't finish, which I'm sure he'll be frustrated by, but he got the nod in the end. So that's probably the main thing to take. So the next match was the first women's match on the show, and this was Erin Wilson versus Jamie Middleton. This was a really fun match to watch. There were a lot of leg entanglements, a lot of just really intricate work. About 2 minutes of Jamie trying to squeeze a triangle to finish, and just not quite being able to get it shut tight enough. So that was unfortunate for her, but she did end up getting the decision. And it seemed really sweet. I mean, you don't want to kind of stereotype women, but there was just, they were smiling more than the guys were. They seemed to be friends after the match. I don't know if they knew each other already, if they were already friends. Certainly, obviously, there aren't huge numbers of women in jiu-jitsu around Scotland, so I'm sure they've bumped into each other at tournaments if they have been competing at the same weight level for a while. But that was just a really, really fun one to watch. The next match was Craig Cowy versus Ryan Garden, which Garden won by straight ankle lock. I'm afraid I don't remember anything about this match. I'm really sorry, guys. I'd been sitting for a while and my knees were starting to hurt, and I just forgot to take any notes, so I do apologize. I'm sure your match was entertaining. I don't remember a match on the show that wasn't entertaining, so I'm sure it was fun. Sorry, I can't say very much more about it. The next match was Stuart Malloy versus Elliott Macarthur. These guys had the best rash guards and spats of the show so far. I was really impressed with how they looked. I always think, if there are no rules on what you have to wear, then wear something that makes people remember you. And these guys, I remember them both. So, it's a fairly short match, which Macarthur won by rear naked. But yeah, just dress well, look good, make people remember who you are. That's the goal of professional sports. Next match, again, I don't have a lot of notes for. This was Andrew Marley versus Dean Hepburn, which Marley won by. After that one, we had Calen Cuthbert versus Argyle Graham. This was another really fun competitive match, a lot of back and forth. And Graham won it with a heel hook. It was actually a very cool finish. I'm not something I can really explain. Certainly not something I can do, but there was just this really cool reversal. And then Argyle Graham got this heel hook. Really nice finish. I really liked that. Next up, we had another women's match. This was Helen Copus versus Erin Beaumont. And this was in the gi. So started on the feet, obviously. Quickly, they scrambled, ended up in full guard, and Beaumont from underneath won with a cross-collar choke. Again, quite a short match, but fun to watch. Just such a slick kind of going straight to the finish, just attacking right out of the boat as soon as they got into guard. Next up was Miguel Alvarez versus Thomas Nelson, which Alvarez won by heel hook. Then Gordon Price versus Ben Campbell. Campbell won by rear naked. He did a really smooth back take, looked really nice. He trapped one arm off, and then just sunk in the rear naked. Really nice professional finish. Next up was Ian Feenan versus Neil Laird. This was another really fun match. There were a lot of really cool, kind of exciting scrambles. I like watching scrambles. Less fun to be in them because I get lost very easily. But yeah, some really entertaining stuff in there. I really enjoyed watching that one, and in the end, it went to Feenan by decision. I seem to remember that it could really have gone, that I felt like it could have gone either way. I'm maybe misremembering that, and if I am, Ian, and it was an open and shut case, then I'm sorry. But I remember it being a really entertaining match with a lot of kind of back and forth and a lot of opportunities for both guys to show what they could do. So again, really, really fun match. And then we went to another kind of sub-main event or co-main event, you might call it. This was Shawnee Stuart versus Jack Gillis. Both guys seem to have brought. One of them is a 10th Planet fighter from 10th Planet Glasgow. One of them is from Marcus Nardini, BJJ, which is the same school that produced both McQueen brothers. So there was a decent number of their gym mates there for this match, plus maybe some family and friends. I'm not exactly sure. But the crowd really got loud for this one. It was really, really fun. It was the only match really on the show, apart from, I think, Mark McQueen's matches, where there was clearly a competition in the crowd. You know, there were supporters on both sides, and people were making a lot of noise. So, again, this was a really, really fun match. The 10th Planet obviously influenced. There was a lot of rubber guard attempted in there. Things got a bit intense towards the end. There was a bit of wrestling where, you know, the collar ties were ending up a little bit more like slaps to the back of the head. Stuart ended up winning by decision, probably, I guess, based on the fact that he was on top for slightly more of the match. But again, this was a close match. Really, really fun to watch. And again, having the crowd into it like that is just makes every match much more entertaining. There's, as we all know from watching the UFC in empty arenas last year, it takes away from the atmosphere of the match. Even if the match is entertaining, it just doesn't have the same feeling if you can't hear that buzz of the crowd. So that, I think, was one of the real standout matches, not just because of the quality of the grappling, but as I say, because of the way the audience got so involved. And so finally we came to the tournament final. And sadly, no Scots represented, but the guys that were represented, you couldn't ask for two better guys, really. At this level of competition, this size of event, these are two guys that really, you know, can put on a show. They're both really, really, really good at what they do. And it was an excellent match. Again, Ingamells wiped his feet. Great, love it. He obviously wasn't very keen to stand and get thrown by Livsey. So he pulled guard pretty early. He is surprisingly mobile on the mat. I mean, there are a lot of big guys who can be dominant, can play a really strong top game, a lot of pressure. Less so, you know, when you see a guy of Ed's size, and to be fair, you know, Ed's not a young man anymore either, but he was inverting and really moving around really fluidly on the mat. It's really well worth seeing him compete, I think, and if you're able to train near him. I'm sure he's an excellent coach as well. He just seems to have a real level of sort of fluidity and mobility that, God, I'm nowhere near his size, and I would love to be able to move like that. So, you know, that was something that really impressed me. But in the end, Owen Livesey is a frightening man. He really is. He's so powerful, and so precise, and so just intense. I think if I was going to use one word to describe him, it would be intense. He seems to have this very focused, very intent on what he's trying to do. And, you know, to be fair to him, that's how you win gold medals at the Commonwealth Games in judo. You know, it's maybe not quite the level of the Olympics or the All Japans or whatever. But the Commonwealth Games, there's some pretty good countries in there with some pretty good judo players, and Owen Livesey was one of the best. He's right up there in terms of talent, and so he's just operated at that very, very high level of competition that very few people ever really get a chance to do, and that level of focus, that level of drive, I think is clear from everything that he does. I've heard him talk now, I've seen him fight 3 times, and I think, yeah, if I were in Hull, I would definitely be looking for him to help guide my training from now on, because he's shown that he can win at the very, very highest level. So that was SGI8. Overall, I was really, really entertained. That's the first thing to say. A lot of people think that BJJ can't be, or grappling can't be a great spectator sport. I think it can. I think the difficulty that we have in building grappling as a spectator sport is that it's very, very complicated. There's an awful lot to understand about what's going on. And that's one of the reasons that most spectators at the moment are people who also are jiu-jitsu practitioners. I don't think it has to be that way. I think audiences can be educated. Audiences can learn. Back in, when was it, the early 90s when the UFC started, I was around for that. And I remember that happening. And I remember none of us understood what Hoist Gracie did in UFC 1. By UFC 4, UFC 5, we started to understand, okay, well, this is guard, and this is how guard works, and this is why guard's important. This is, what an armbar from guard looks like. This is what a triangle looks like. This rear naked choke works pretty effectively. We'd started to see different things. We started to understand how it worked. And I think there's a process that has to happen to educate your audience. But if you're somebody who is maybe thinking about going to a grappling event like this, and maybe you've found big open tournaments quite dull because they're just not very flashy, and you've got lots of things distracting your attention, it's hard to stay focused on one match. I think something like this does make that different. I think it's great getting people bringing in their gym mates and their friends and family to support them. I think that, especially in a small building, that really creates an atmosphere. I don't know how many tickets Sean Stuart sold to this show, but he deserves a bonus for getting so many people in supporting him. That was really, really fun to see. Again, I mentioned earlier, the timing of the show, I understand it. I understand wanting to get a lot of matches on the show. I understand having to be prepared for what happens if every match goes the distance. I do get it. I do appreciate that it's a difficult thing to plan out, but I do feel like maybe the 5:30 start is a little bit early, and I don't want to be one of those people, like you see it at big boxing events where nobody's there for the prelims, and then everybody troops in just before the main event starts. All the celebrities troop in and fill up their front row seats. I don't like that. I always like the fact that The Rock and The Undertaker, for example, when they go to UFC shows, would always make a point of being there for all the prelim matches. And I feel the same way. I'm the same way when I go to gigs. I always want to be there for the support band. You never know who you might see that, well, I've just seen a future star. So I always like watching the prelims of all kind of fighting sports. It's just something that I really enjoy. So I wouldn't want to come late to the show, but coming in at 5 o'clock and then being there till the back of 10, it makes for quite a long night, and I think if I had kids, for example, it would make it difficult to take them. But really, other than that, I have no criticisms at all. The show was excellent. The matches were all well put together. One or two matches were, finished reasonably quickly, and that's maybe not a sign that it was the most competitive match. But then there were also several matches that went to the time limit, and a number of matches that were really entertaining back and forths. So I think the matchmaking is obviously good. The production was good. Everything ran really smoothly. I was surprised at how quickly things moved between matches. Everything was very, very smooth in terms of getting the next match out in good time. And speaking from experience working backstage at wrestling shows, that's not as easy as it looks. It really isn't. So that's something that I do give them a lot of credit for. But overall, a really, really entertaining show, really fun. I will definitely be back at the next one, which is SGI8. That's taking place on December 11th. And that one's going to feature a Four Nations tournament with 4 teams, again in a kind of quintet type format. One from England, one from Scotland, one from Ireland, and one from Wales. The English team is going to be led by Owen Livesey, so I'm especially looking forward to seeing him coming back and really seeing if we can't get a wee bit of revenge for Scotland by knocking out his team. But we'll see how that goes. I'm sure I'll talk to you about it when it happens. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Please do like the video if you enjoyed this. If you'd like to hear more about it, if you'd like to hear me talk about this kind of thing more, then do please let me know down in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel. That makes a big difference to the success of the channel overall. So please do that. But until then, thanks very much for watching. Have fun at training, and I'll see you soon.